Hey, everybody. The internet's favorite list-centric list making podcast about movies, that's a whole lot of words, is back. We're here, and we're going to do a list for you tonight. 1021. I'm sure there's an introduction there somewhere. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined with me, as always, by the soon-to-be birthday person, Jen.
Indeed. In fact, did you know? Okay, a little bit of trivia about my birthday. Did you know that uh, William Shakespeare, who may or may not have been a person, has the birth date and the death date of April 23rd? And that coincidentally is my birthday too. So I've always sort of taken that as a sign that I should try to be a real person writer instead of a, you know, is this questionable? I don't know if that actually works, but
Would you like to know the trivia about my birthday in the same vein?
Yes, tell me.
Well, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is January 15th.
Hmm.
Jim Carrey's birthday is January 17th. And
Hmm.
I always thought I'm supposed to be the connective tissue, the guy that creates the comedy that changes the world.
Oh, hey.
And then what you know, it's also born on the 16th, Lin Manuel Miranda.
Oh, that's a good birthday to share.
Yeah, it's definitely my icebreaker.
That's a great
Hey,
birthday to
birthday buddy.
share.
But it I guess he also got the similar, you know, instinct about where his birthday landed because he actually went and did the thing about creating the thing that, yeah.
Well, the big April 23rd uh event, which I really do absolutely love, because it just fits right in with everything that I have done and sort of still do, right? Because I'm like an amateur armchair historian.
Mm-hmm.
It's St. George's Day. And
Mm.
St. George's Day is I mean it's huge in the UK. It's an absolutely huge. Well, I shouldn't say it's huge. I mean, it's not, like, oh my god, it's Thanksgiving or anything, but it's big enough that it like is it means something to me. And also, there's St. George and the Dragon, and I collect dragons. I don't know. I have all of these little synchronistic pieces that sort of just all fit together, which may or may not be connected, but the serendipity of it all gives me great pleasure. So I will just follow my bliss through this and say, I love this day. Such a great day. And I would say that even if I hadn't been born on this day, still a good day.
Well, if you weren't born on this day in this season, what season do you think you would like to be born in if it
Y-
wasn't spring?
Uh, if it wasn't spring,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't spring, I think I would choose a fall birthday.
Okay, a fall birthday, a fall birthday.
Somewhere around October, somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay, what about your third choice?
Third choice. Okay. I guess I could go for a summer birthday.
Hey, summer. That's
Hey, how about
coincidence.
that? I always
Drag
felt
that
bad.
segue, kicking and
I
screaming.
always felt bad for kids that were born in the summer because, if you live in the US and you were born before, we had year round school, if you were born in the summer, nobody could ever come to your birthday party, you know? Because you lose touch with all your friends from school and you're just, who are you left with? Your family. Oh, God.
Kind of like Angela Kinsey.
Yeah, I really do actually feel bad for kids that, it's the middle of the although I guess if it's the middle of the summer, you get your pick of venues. So you could go to the lake, you could go to pretty much any place because the weather is really good. I mean, there were times for my birthday in April when it snowed. I I wasn't in Hawaii then, but if it snowed in Hawaii now, I would be a little bit concerned. But I can remember that there were there were actual years where it snowed in April. So it's still pretty cold in April.
I remember when I lived in Alaska doing an Easter egg hunt in the snow.
Oof, man, that's harsh.
Easy to find the eggs though.
I bet. I bet. And I bet that they were kind of like popsicles afterwards too. So I don't know,
Maybe just a tad.
not sure how I feel about egg flavored popsicles, but yeah, could be good for somebody.
It was fun, and I wish I lived in Alaska again because it doesn't feel like summer there ever. It's very nice in the summertime, and you know what else is nice? What else is nice? Not nice. Okay, I'm kind of uh, skipping here. Jen, why don't you tell us what this is about tonight?
Josh is going to go off and grab some coffee and some Krispy Kreme. And yeah, I'll tell you all about our show for tonight. So I had this idea last week that, okay, I know it's spring, but usually in the spring, this is when we look forward to the summer. And most of us, I think, by the time that winter is over, have visions of, bathing suits and sun tanning and the beach and all kinds of stuff in our heads. So I thought it might be fun to put together a list of our favorite summer movies. That is, movies that either take place in the summer, prominently, or that feature the summer as a part of the movie that is important. And I can say that by looking at my list, most of my movies are, I think I would say that they are pretty much like summer movies, not summer movies like, oh, you go see them in the summer, but movies about the summer. And as always, many of my movies are scary movies. But I have a couple of movies in here that are just plain fun. And I can almost guarantee that at least one of these will be a crossover with Josh. I won't tell you which one, but I can almost guarantee that one of these will be a crossover. I just know it. I feel it in my bones.
I already know which one it is,
Yeah?
but we'll
Okay.
get there.
I can't wait to figure this out.
And this is not because of any, you know, uh, knowledge in advance of Jen's list on my part. We are still completely, absolutely blind to each other's lists. I have that same hunch, I think.
You know what? I just thought of something though. I think a movie that you think is going to be on my list is actually didn't make it to my list.
How
Oh,
dare you?
yeah, I think this might actually be an interesting list. Cuz I
Where's
just
that
thought of that.
explicit tag?
Yeah,
It's about to get real in here.
we're going to have a smackdown on 10 to 1 tonight. It'll
Speaking
be
of which,
exciting.
who should start us off?
Well, since you started last week, how about I start this week?
The floor is yours, Jen. Number 10.
All right. Well, interesting that you should talk about the floor when in this particular movie, yeah, we kind of don't really have very many floors. But what we do have are a lot of fish. Yes, lots of fish. Fish that for some reason human beings have feared and I don't know. They make a really good horror movie source topic. I've never quite understood why we're so afraid of these fish, but I do remember being a kid and being up at this lake that we used to go to every summer called Lake George, and my cousins told me that there were these type of fish in the lake, and I wouldn't go in the lake for, I don't know, a whole week because I was scared. I am talking about Piranha. I'm specifically talking about Piranha 3D. This movie is just absolute trash, but it is so fun. It is the kind of trash that is like, you see raccoons diving into, it's super exciting. There's things to be experienced here that will make you laugh out loud, but also at the same time, um, it is such it's like I can't even describe how ridiculously silly some of these things are, but it feels like such a fun flick. Fun, obviously the fish eat everybody. There's all of these like, crazy, pardon the pun, red herrings in the movie. There's a whole bunch of kind of famous guest stars. There's a whole lot of silliness, the kind of thing where you're watching a horror movie and that you're going to yell at the screen and tell the person, don't do that, don't do that. It doesn't matter because, of course, they always go do it. Piranha is filled with all of those moments. Piranha 3D is one of those movies which I find to be the most fascinating in the horror genre because it doesn't attempt to take itself seriously much at all. In fact, I think it goes out of its way um, kind of have fun, not just with the topic, because the earlier films I think maybe were a little bit too serious. But how can you not watch Christopher Lloyd in Piranha 3D and not feel like there's something fun happening here? It's just absolutely hilarious. Eli Roth was in it. He makes a cameo, which I also felt like was absolutely great. And there's there's all these little like trivial moments in this movie that both play off of the idea of having summer fun, but also really, like I said, not taking itself so seriously that it doesn't sort of just you just go with the flow. In a lot of ways, I feel like Piranha 3D is is what, or was, I should say, sort of like the answer to what kind of happens if you just sort of let your guard down with a horror movie. Now, I will say that although this movie is supposed to happen at spring break, it doesn't really feel like it. It definitely feels like a summer movie, and so that's why I included it. All of the other Piranha movies are basically in the summer, and it just, I don't know, it was weird that I think they needed to have like a lot of people there, and that's why they said, oh no, it's gonna have to be spring break. I'm still gonna call it a summer movie. On one other thing about this particular movie, which I feel like is just absolutely hilarious, is it is obviously, absolutely obviously a rip on Jaws, where the town needs to bring in a whole lot of revenue, so they don't want anything bad happening. They kind of want to cover up whatever they think is sort of happening, and they're sort of not afraid to even make that correlation. Like, it's just absolutely fun. So I'm going to highly recommend, if you haven't seen Piranha 3D, have a fun time watching this. It's not even really that bloody. I mean, there's some scary parts, by way of like body horror, but they're almost funny. So I say have a great time, grab some popcorn. It's a great Friday night flick. Piranha 3D. Yes, absolutely. That is my number 10 pick.
Available on HBO Max, I believe.
Yeah, I just recently saw it on HBO Max.
So I will be checking it. I've been meaning to check that one out for a very long time.
It's
Um,
really fun.
it has you mentioned it has a lot of people in it. Adam Scott
Yep.
is in there. Paul Shear.
Yep.
Um, Enjoy me some Paul Shear.
And they all play these like ridiculous small bit parts, but it just sort of like all adds up to, oh hey, there's a famous person, hey, there's a famous person, and it's really fun.
Excellent choice, except it's not summer. But you know what? I guess we're going to talk
I,
about my number 10.
I realized that sort of like at the end, because it felt like such a summer movie to me that I totally forgot until basically until tonight, that the movie actually takes place at spring break. So I apologize to everyone, but it does feel like a summer movie. So yeah, hopefully the rest of my list will redeem me from this one small offshoot. But yeah.
As long as you don't like pull out. Well, my next movie is Krampus.
When we all wished it was summer. No, I won't do that. I also won't pull out like, The Gray or anything like that. I'll make sure that we'll keep it copacetic from this point forward.
Or what was it? My next movie is Alive.
Oh, yeah,
because
see.
in the northern hemisphere it was summer.
Right, right. Yeah, I could actually maybe sort of see that. Yeah.
Well, I found out long ago it's a it's a long way down the holiday road.
Cool runnings because, they're Jamaican. So, it's always summer in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I promise I won't use those powers of extension to go that far.
Although that would be a, a weird way to do the list one week. We're like our top 10 farthest stretches to make a list.
We'll go there someday. But we'll try to keep it under the sanity level right now.
Future insanity incoming. My number 10, as I said, it's a long way down that holiday road. National Lampoon's Vacation. It's it's pretty difficult to imagine um, growing up having summer without a family vacation. At least that's the way it was when I was growing up. So when Clark Griswold is telling his family, "We're going to Wally World," well, naturally he had to load them up into the family wagon, the new one that just isn't anything that you want to drive, and drive them across the country where Clark has a couple of run-ins with a Ferrari driving Christy Brinkley, where they meet his, or not meet, but they get reacquainted with his in-laws. How do you use a magazine? I don't know. Anyway, the cross-country trek filled with shenanigans of this Griswold family is uh, less family oriented than I think any family movie should be. But it was the 80s, and you could put kids in raunchy comedies, and nobody batted an eye. But I think the greatest part of all of this is when they make it to Wally World, when they go through the absolute hell of a trip that was getting there, dead family members and dogs and just anything and everything that can go wrong went wrong. And they get to Wally World, and the moose tells them, "Sorry, we're closed," in so many words, which leads to Clark Griswold taking hostages. Uh, that's where John Candy comes in, and they have a final time uh, exploring the park in this hostage situation. But that's what it really boils down to for me. It's, well, not the hostage situation, but family trips. No school. You're driving to your destination. You're not flying, because driving the the travel is just as important as the destination. The trip, to create those memories, those family memories that last a lifetime. And even though Clark doesn't exactly have his head on straight, he has the right idea about trying to instill into his kids this this idea that you only get so many years to make these lasting memories. And it's something I've taken to heart, and I'm glad, canon wise, you know, Russ, the son, has taken it to heart as well, because there was a sequel. Well, there have been several sequels, but a sequel starring Ed Helms as the finally grown up Russ. Because their ages get really weird, the kids' ages for each sequel. And they also look different too. different actors. So to see Russ get his own movie, his own vacation movie about taking the kids on vacation, it's Clark's lessons sunk in, and it did for me as well because I take my kids on vacations every year. And that's why National Lampoon's Vacation is my number 10.
So you basically picked the happiest of films.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Is that
Well,
what? What?
it's actually a direct quote from Clark Griswold, who says we're going to have the happiest vacation.
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with this movie. What movie is this?
Okay, well, never mind. We'll get to that in our holiday edition. We'll tackle that one. Okay. Let's see. So my number 9. Okay, this one. Oh boy. This one is this is one of the most contentious movies I think that I have both ever talked about, but not necessarily seen. I mean, it's bad. No, and I shouldn't say it's bad. Like it's not a bad movie. I actually really like this movie for a number of reasons. God, I know I'm gonna get hate mail for this. Um, but the movie itself is um it's difficult. It's very difficult. Difficult on a number of different levels. The original that was done is one of those movies that I'm surprised that they ever actually let them make it. Because it didn't, to me, it felt as if the movie crossed boundary lines that just sort of make you uh question humanity in general, even when the people who are the victims do what they do. It still sort of leaves you with this moment of, wow, was that the right thing to do? I mean, like, it's hard. There are so many crazy line blurring questions, especially in movies where we tend to like our morality to be cut and dry. We like to know that, the people that do drugs in a movie, yeah, they're always the bad guys, or they're usually the people that will get punished in some way. We like our we also like our good guys to have their hands mostly clean of sort of doing things that maybe most of us wouldn't do. And then when we cross that line and become more vigilante, we sort of grapple with some of those questions. So there's two versions of this movie. I went with the 1972 version of this movie, although the 2009 version is actually still just as crazy, interesting, and also psychologically messing with your head. It does happen in the summer. Family goes up to their house, and they have a summer house. Lucky them, on a lake, and they, yeah, they tend to do this, I guess, every summer. The movie is called The Last House on the Left. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is not a movie that I would suggest that you watch if you don't sort of understand going into it that it deals with very difficult topics. The group, the people who are basically the quote unquote bad guys, this gang of sort of, I guess I would call them, uh I, they're roguish, but it's like they're kind of like their own sort of traveling gang, right? And they basically abduct these two girls. They don't abduct them like, out of nowhere. There's a drug deal in a hotel, and it sort of becomes, it escalates very quickly, I guess you could say. And they bring them to this location out in the middle of the forest, and in the 1972 version, there are the girls are actually going to a rock concert. In the 2009 version, there's the whole, hey, let's go get some pot, and that thing. So the storylines change a little bit, but the end result is Um, one of the girls, actually both of the girls, but one of them ends up dying, and the other they think that she's dead, but only after she's been raped and left for dead. Okay, she doesn't die. She actually survives, and she makes it back home because home is across the lake where they actually leave her. And when she gets back home, she she can't say anything. She can't say what happened, but the vigilantes, or no, I'm sorry, not the vigilantes, the gang, um, end up coming to the door and are sort of like asking for, shelter. Hey, we're kind of lost. We don't know what's going on. Blah blah blah. They make up a story. Turns out mom and dad find out that these are the people that actually hurt their daughter, and then they turn into the vigilantes that end up yeah, making short work of our traveling gang. Now, it's a hard movie to watch, but the reason that I like this movie and the reason that I chose it as a summer movie is because this is one of those sort of like summer horror films that is like the cautionary tale of, not being involved with people that are too different, too strange, that there is danger lurking out there, and that, everybody's got to be careful, that there's a clear demarcation line between the two girls. One of the girls is, sort of straight as an arrow, and the other girl is sort of like off there a little bit, doing a bit of drugs. And I find it very interesting that this is how we separate out our morality, but I also find the idea of this as, this is the epitome of how things can go wrong in a summer or on a summer vacation. um Sort of breathtaking. Like, this is the not I won't say it's the worst of the worst, but this is one of the worst things that could happen, and it touches everybody. So everybody who goes to to everybody that goes to this location, including ending up at the house, ends up being involved in this truly awful thing that happens. Um, I also kind of like it because as a film about summer, it also reminds us that vacationing is not necessarily always a foolproof way to escape crime, or I shouldn't even say escape crime, escape the things that we fear when we are in our own residences, right? That being on vacation is not necessarily a way of safeguarding ourselves from the things that we may be running away from. We're running away from the city because it's all crime and there's things going on, and we don't, we need the peace of the country. But then you get to the country and you realize, no, actually, you can't run away from your problems. You actually have to face them. So it's kind of interesting. There's lots of little pieces, lots of little metaphors, lots of overarching analogies that are, I think, kind of fun. I really did like this movie for that aspect. And I chose it as a summer movie. I know it's not like an uplifting summer movie, but it is definitely the cautionary tale of summer. So, Last House on the Left, take your pick, 1972 or 2009. Both super good. Little differences in how things happen, but basically overall same result. So that's my number 9 pick.
Good Lord.
Crazy, crazy, right? Totally crazy.
Talk about your crazy choices.
Hmm.
I watched the remake, or should I say the most recent version, because I'm hard pressed to call it a remake, since there are so in some respects the only thing they really have similar is the title and a few of the actions.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's the same results happen,
Right.
right? So I think that's what they were going for. But yeah, it is fundamentally, it is a different narrative that takes place from 1972 to 2009.
Not many
And
movies make me cringe, but that one hit hard.
possibly I think that the 1972 movie is even worse. And I use this term not to, say that the movie is worse, but the actions are worse in the 1972 movies, because I feel like in the early 1970s there was a we gave movies a big pass on personal violence, and especially violence against women, that even in 2009 we cannot stomach anymore. And now fast forward to 2023, and no, this movie would not be made again, I don't think, without a lot of, I mean, like, really heavy, um even more. It would be even more of the justice must be done. And I mean, you already get that from the 72 and the 2009 movie, but I feel like we gave a big pass to violence against women in the 1970s as a kind of almost exploitation. And I mean, my point of doing this list was not just to highlight the feel good movies of summer, but also the movies of summer that give us some kind of interaction with the season that reminds us that we can't leave our problems behind, that going on vacation doesn't fix things, but also that that seasons matter, but remember that the world outside of us continues to move on. And I feel like that's part of the reason that I chose this. So there you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, um, it takes place during summer, so that helps.
It does, actually. This movie does take place during summer, and like I said, summer is summer is not always an explicit avenue of just having fun. I'm actually going to get to this in a couple of other movies on my list, but this one definitely has a spot that no other movie sort of can occupy, because it is so crazy. Yeah, it's cringy, but it's more than cringy. It is cringy though. You gotta be careful watching this movie.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So you ready for my
So
number 9?
I am actually ready for your number 9. I'm also ready for my number 8 because it's a much happier movie. So
Well, after Last House on the Left, I'm not sure how it could be much unhappier.
well, my number 7 actually could be. So yeah, we'll
Oh
talk
boy.
about that when we get to it. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, my number 9, Last House on the Left. My number 7, The Last House on the Left, the other one.
It's The Last House on the Right. That's the other one. Yeah.
Ah.
Hmm.
Well, all I can say is man makes list. List goes on podcast. Podcast goes on the internet.
That's good. I mean, when we get to my number 7, I'll remind you that number 9 said "Hold my beer," and then we'll move on from there.
Well, I was introducing my number 9.
Hmm.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. Uh, Experts and scientists say, hey, we got to shut this down or people will die. Politicians say, nah.
Um, most movies of the early 2000s.
Most of the year 2020. I'm talking about when it comes to movies, though. Jaws.
Dun dun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's our first crossover.
Okay, then I will be a master of brevity. It's summer. What's more summer than going to the beach and hanging out and just enjoying a nice, relaxing day being eaten by sharks? Nothing is more summer than that. Although it's only my number 9, everybody knows the story of Jaws. And if you haven't, that means you haven't seen it. And what?
If you haven't, welcome to the 21st century. We hope that living underneath that rock was fun, but here we are.
Stop the show right now and go watch Jaws.
Indeed.
That should be enough time. So, welcome back from your Jaws. I'm guessing marathon. Sorry about Jaws 3D. Anyway, now that you're back, I will say that the story of Jaws. Hungry shark finds some people swimming, decides, looks tasty, takes a few bites, gets that confirmed. People are tasty. But some jerk humans are like, nope, we can't have that hungry shark, trying not to be hungry. We should kill it. Because, that's what you do. You go to someone's house and kill them, like Last House on the Left. See how I tied our movies together there?
Yeah, look at that. That was pretty good.
I mean, Jaws is just minding his own business, eating a few, people that, quite frankly, probably shouldn't have been in the water anyway. I honestly did not think I was going to be sticking up for the shark when I talk about this movie. But you know what? Haven't been a fan of people recently, so I'm just gonna leave that there. Anyway, it's a great cast. Jen, since this is our first crossover, I'll let you do the heavy lifting when we get to it on your list. But it's my number 9, and it is. It's not just a quintessential movie that takes place in the summer. It is the quintessential, the premier summer film, the movie that those big summer blockbusters. It started it all.
Right.
So Jaws, number 9.
Good choice. I mean, I would say that even if it hadn't been on my list, but good choice. Love
Thank you.
Jaws. And I do actually have quite a bit to say about Jaws. Okay, my number 8. My number 8 movie is a movie that I have seen probably no less than 10 times. I, for some reason, really love the combination of Steve Martin, of Dan Aykroyd and John Candy. Both of them together are so hilarious. I just can't think of a better combination of people. They crack me up every time. The jokes never freaking get old. A little bit of peril, some crazy bears, a guy that gets struck by lightning a million times. Um, it's just such a fun movie. It's called The Great Outdoors. The Great Outdoors is one of those films that I feel like most people have probably seen. It was released in 1988. John Candy and Dan Aykroyd were kind of, at I guess I would call them, they were at the higher points of their career. Um, it's also one of those films that it has so many messages of family togetherness, but it also highlights why you hate the people who are like your in-laws or your extended family, and how sometimes a small conversation about something can end in a gigantic misunderstanding. But also there's the part where somebody tries to swindle the other member of the family, and yeah, it's hard to not have hard feelings about that. There's so many quirky things about the great outdoors which just make it so fun. I mean, there's the eating contest, um there's the water skiing incidences, there's the board games in the house, there's the, I don't know, there's so many aspects of the great outdoors that sort of like bring back, I think, nostalgic feelings from maybe my own childhood, and also the way that I think a lot of people imagine their vacations either were or may have, little crossover pieces to. It's just generally a fun movie. Now, the one thing about the great outdoors, which I will say, I think a lot of movies sort of overlook, is that it it definitely employs the use of slapstick comedy in a way that still works. It doesn't feel over the top, but it does feel like it's funny. It's essentially funny. Um, they use a lot of the sort of tricks of the day to make things look far worse than they were, but you can feel it. Like it's so you actually cringe when certain things happen. I just really love uh Chet and Roman. I really love the whole dynamic between everybody. Um, I love the fact that there are raccoons in this. That's like one of my favorite parts. There are these raccoons that continually just mess with the family. I really also like the music in this. It's just fun. There is something about this which makes you feel kind of I don't know. It gives you the feel good summer vibes. I also really love the fact that this movie was actually featured in Poltergeist 3. So clearly, we're not the only people that like this movie. And I think the last thing that I'll say about this movie is there's some comedy genius in this. There's some lines in this movie that are just hilarious. I mean, the I think the comedy is what is the draw is, but it also tries to be a feel good movie about reconciliation and making people understand that family sort of is everything, and that without family, you going it alone is never the right way to do it. All of those things, and they just sort of all add up to here's a good feel good summer movie. And so you get comedy, you get a little bit of, moral. Here's your compass. Be good to your family, be good to each other. And you also get all of the other stuff that I said. So I'm going to just say that The Great Outdoors is a fun movie. It deserves, I think, a spot on everybody's top summer movies to watch. It has aged still so well, despite the fact that it was released in 1988. It's still really fun. And yeah, I don't know how you beat the comedy genius of Dan Aykroyd and John Candy. So, number 8, The Great Outdoors.
I love that movie.
I thought you might like that movie.
If you recall, for our vacation movies, that was on my list.
Yes, it was. That's right. I was wondering if we were going to have like a lot of crossovers with our vacations, but I don't. But I know I didn't have a ton, because I feel like I used a different criteria for these. So
As did I. I'm not saying there's no crossover, but I was a little adamant about making sure that I wasn't just, copying the
rehashing.
list. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought about that too.
And yeah, love that movie. I was so tempted to put it on this list too, but like I said, wasn't trying to just do, vacation list 2.0.
Right, right.
I even have a different vacation movie on my list than that one. So yeah, excellent choice, excellent. And I
Thank you.
still eat hot dogs. So
Inside joke, but honestly, if you watch the movie, you'll get it.
so yeah, go watch that. You don't have to pause the show and do it now. If you want to, cool. If not, it'll be there. So my number eight is one that hmm, is summer important. Yes, after all, it is a hot one.
Is it
Uh,
Predator?
no, no,
Darn it.
it's Do the Right Thing.
Oh, hey, there's an interesting one.
It's summer, and it's hot, as it usually is in summer. But what what people should know about this particular movie is that there was a time when things like air conditioners weren't, as readily available, right? Where your life was just you have to deal with the heat. And if there's something that could be said uh, about summer through any time in history, is when it heats up, people also heat up. And the events of this movie, well, let me put it this way: I don't think anything would have happened if it were autumn in New York. I think the heat played a major factor in the short uh, tempers, or as they say, when the temperature rises, tempers flare, things like that. So, in regards to summer, and in regards of do the right thing, while everyone is just doing their best to just beat the heat and doing anything they can just to get by at the same time. I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, okay, so let me ask you a question about
Yeah,
this
please
because
do.
I definitely would like to understand how do the right thing, how you think that do the right thing is like is this more of a it's summer adjacent, or do you think that do the right thing uses the summer to kind of underscore the 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 narrative? Because see, like when I watch do the right thing, I do see that summer is important. There is heat, and it's important to understand that oftentimes in the summer, especially in the city, tempers run high. Not necessarily that they, don't have other frustrations all other seasons, but in the summer, people tend to be a little bit more short tempered, and the heat plays a huge part of that. But the other thing is that everything is open and available. And so you have the opportunity to be in places all over with that you wouldn't have if you weren't sort of if it wasn't the summer, right? Because the summer is when everything is open, everything is available, there are no restrictions, that kind of thing. So what of those two, which do you think is the more important part?
I would say it's the latter, really. I use summer as a catalyst
Mm,
for
okay,
all of the events that happen.
that makes sense.
And it's one of those movies that utilizes well its environment to affect change in the characters and the people in the area. And it's these changes in attitudes and just general the way people treat each other,
Yeah.
when the heat is sweltering, that is the reason why um I keep using these broad general terms. I want to really kind of zero in on the idea, and I'm not really sure where to put that nail.
I okay, so I think I might be able to help you just a little bit. Do the right thing. For anybody who hasn't seen it, do the right thing. And if you haven't seen it, wow, you really should see it because this is one of those movies that I think kind of goes down in every book that I've ever seen on the top 500 movies to watch. Right? um there is this overall tension that happens in do the right thing, which is akin to, I guess I would call it simmering, right? And as things are simmering, you can feel that any one escalation will raise, and I'm using these words purposefully, it will raise the temperature and therefore raise the stakes. So the heat sort of acts as a catalyst altogether to everything else that's happening. It's not that it is that there's like this direct inference that, oh, okay, well, the summer made me do it. But there is this feeling of, because it is taking place in the summer, the racial tensions, the overtones of sort of just people being um discontent and maybe feeling a little bit more I'm trying to think of a good word for this, but you know unsatisfied with what's happening. It sort of pushes them over the top. And the idea that in the summer, there's actually statistics that say that more crime happens in summer than happens at any other time of the year. And part of that is the fact that, people are out and about. They're not in their homes sort of hibernating for most of the country. Um, and so, you have open access to everybody, and things are happening in all different places. But the other part of it is just this, like I said, there is this tension of things almost coming to a boil, both narratively and literally inside of the story. Like the temperature of everything acts as this sort of over the top part of this movie. The I think, I mean, I don't know about you because I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think part of Do the Right Things tie-in to being Here's the Summer is that any time that you're dealing with a city and you are also dealing with the elements, and summer in particular, you're always dealing with more. And that, I think, sort of makes everything ripe for the happening in Do the Right Thing. And just to be very clear, um the the Spike Lee part of this that really sells this movie has a lot to do with sort of the iconic understanding that teenagers and neighborhoods do things in the summer that are different. I mean, I can remember the scene when they open the fire hydrant to beat the heat wave, and people are truly struggling in this movie to deal with the heat, but that just sort of raises all of the other tensions that are happening as well, and that's really where the movie sort of finds its standing. Have I paraphrased that correctly?
Yes, you absolutely had me nail that analysis.
Cool. Very cool.
I'm so good at what I do.
I I do really like this movie a lot. I this is actually one of my, I think, one of my favorite Spike Lee movies. It says a lot. This movie says a lot. And it's still, I think, just as relevant today as it was when it was released. So that
Yeah, yeah,
also
and
tells you a lot.
just a little addendum when it comes to the origins of the movie. I read that Spike Lee was very much inspired by Alfred Hitchcock Presents,
Oh, I
a
didn't know that.
specific episode where two characters talk about how they believe hot weather increases violent tendencies,
Nice. I
and
mean,
the
that's a great tie-in.
heat wave, racial tensions, and all the way across the board, with the multiple ethnicities converging in the neighborhood. Um, it's like you said very intently. Uh, it reached a boiling point, and the literal heat made it boil over, and people, you know, people got hurt,
Right.
and this stuff actually happens. So
And
yeah, yeah, do the right things, number eight.
I said LA, but it actually takes place in Nueva York, right? It takes place in
Yeah,
New
New
York
York.
City. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I'm sorry. I was mixing my films, and but I can see New York as the this is the backdrop.
Fight
Yeah,
the power.
and if you God, if you've ever spent a summer in New York City, which I spent many, y the amount of asphalt that is in New York City, it is it is much different to experience a heat wave in New York City than it is to experience a heat wave almost any place else. And I say that because the city itself
It's like
really holds on to the heat,
yeah, it's like
and
an oven.
it's so different from like LA, where at least there is a bit more wide open expanse, so you're not dealing with the same kind of cooking that you are in New York City. It's just and also the other thing is, LA is expansive, New York City is on top of itself. So when things get crazy, it gets crazy with a lot of people at one time. So Do the Right Thing really takes advantage of that idea and works really super well with it. So yeah, good movie. Very good movie.
Summer.
Okay, well, remember when I said my number 9 said here hold my beer
I
or number
remember
7.
it, but I don't
Okay.
believe it.
My number 7 said here hold my beer for number 9. Okay. So my my number 7 movie is oh boy, if you haven't seen this movie and you don't like Last House on the Right, or if you think that that movie is just too controversial for you and you shouldn't watch it, or just wouldn't be interested in it, do not watch the movie that I'm about to introduce, because this movie is, I think, for all intents and purposes, possibly worse. This movie is called Funny Games. If you haven't seen Funny Games, I'm trying to think of a really good way of summarizing this movie, and I'm not coming up with a great one, so I'm going to describe it just a little bit. It stars Naomi Watts, Tim Roth, and Michael Pitt. Basically, what happens is these two, and I will just call them psychopathic people, break into a family's home, and they do things that are incredibly unsettling and unnerving. Um, it is absolutely a I, I mean, it's a metaphor for so many things. There are so many pieces in here that deserve storied deconstruction. But let's just put out there that the violence is the point, that it really is absolutely I think one of the most quintessential home invasion films that there is. Home invasion feels a little bit strong here because it they capture and hold these people hostage, and that is sort of the point. But it doesn't feel like, there isn't much that the family can do. They have a very difficult time fighting back, and in the end some really disturbing things happen. um Disturbing because the killers, or the two men who, and I'm using the word men lightly here because they're really young. The people that are the kidnappers, they are specifically trying to mess with these people's heads as best they can, and they do a really good job. At one point, one of the mom says, why don't you just kill us? And the one of the psychopaths says, don't forget the importance of entertainment. And I mean, like, that sort of summarizes the whole thing. They are looking at their hostages as their violent entertainment. And it's super crazy. It is definitely a commentary on how we perceive violence and how we deal with it and how we can compartmentalize it, how we can watch things that are incredibly vicious and then still walk around the rest of our day, doing our nice things for our cats and our dogs and our kids. And, we are not necessarily always phased by it. Um, it's a rather biting commentary, I will say, about that. It takes place in the summer. This is the family's vacation home, and it's very upscale. It's gorgeous. It's actually like, stuff of dreams. They're also on a lake, which is also super cool. And the other thing about this, which is, I'm spoilers if you don't want to know, you know, turn me off for a second or whatever. Um, the kid dies in this one, and it's so disturbing when it happens that when you come back from it, when you come back from knowing that the kid is dead, um, you feel as if all hope is lost. It almost feels like, wow, how can there be any more of this movie? I mean, the most climactic part of the film is done, right? No, no, it's not. And it continues on in this sort of almost painful mechanism of drawing out the fact that the violence is the point. This is, I think, my one of the most disturbing films that I can think of that presents a kind of psychological power over people. It's also oftentimes cited in that very same kind of list format of top 500 movies that you should watch for its absolute microscope look at how we perceive violence and then how we act on it, and then what we are willing to do or not do in order to escape violence. It's very telling that you could almost transport everything that happens in this film and put it in present day, and it would still absolutely make sense because we are still grappling with the same exact things. We haven't changed very much in the past 15 or so years. We are still grappling with the same exact things, and as such it still has an extremely powerful message. I will warn you, though, that this movie is not for the faint-hearted. It is very difficult to watch, especially if you are sensitive. It's not so much that there's a lot of body gore or that that there's a crazy amount of blood or anything, but there is an intense amount of psychological, just absolute over the top, difficult topics to deal with. It really feels like there is something intense going on here. And I think the other thing about this movie that makes it, I think, another, movie for summer is that once again, this is sort of a close up understanding of how we react to this idea that we can escape or vacation away our problems. And that isn't the case. We don't vacation away our problems, we just vacation, and our problems are still there. And this sort of points that high powered telescope on that exact issue. So, my number 7 is Funny Games.
Can't say I've heard of this one.
It's If you look up Funny Games and you read anything about it, usually you come up with a group of people, critics and just film goers alike, who have a very difficult time with the subject matter but will also rate it very highly. In fact, at Rotten Tomatoes it gets a 71% for critic score and an 83% for audience score. So it resonates hard, but it is really difficult to watch. Like, it does not, there is a kind of nihilism in this film which extends beyond just sort of the average nihilism. It is a true philosophical understanding of what nihilism can create and why, it's not just a petty thing to be nihilistic. There is a kind of pervasive sense of just absolute disregard for humanity by delving into this sort of nihilistic state. So, I mean, there's a lot to this movie. Obviously, there's a lot more than, I could say in a list, but it but in terms of what it says, in our summer kind of film piece, it absolutely is the same sort of idea as Last House on the Left, but sort of on steroids.
I don't know if that's the thing that needed steroids.
And yet here I am to point out that, hey, this exists. So Hopefully, now that it's been on this list, I don't need to put this on any other list because, yeah, it's pretty. I personally felt like, and I watch a lot of horror. I mean, horror
Hey,
is one of
you
the
had to watch one or
genres.
two horror movies.
This is my. I love this genre. I mean, I'm an avid subscriber to Shudder. I personally just look for everything that I can look for in this genre. This movie disturbed me, and I'm not disturbed by a lot, but this movie really disturbed me a lot. So that, I don't know, take that with a grain of salt, but yeah, this is a big thing.
Doctor said I shouldn't have a lot of sodium.
I'm sorry.
Mm.
I I think just, if I could say one more thing, I think the thing that makes this movie so unsettling is that in the very end, there's sort of a breaking of the fourth wall where uh, one of the people in the film basically looks at the audience and says, "You're a part of this now too," making us sort of complicit in the acts of violence that have happened because we just consumed them as media. And it's it's disturbing and it's eye-opening. So, there you go. That's why, that's why it's on my list.
That is an interesting uh, take.
It
Looking at the
is.
audience and saying, "Man, you created this."
Yeah, exactly. And I find that to be a fascinating aspect of, this is, who are we when we consume this media? Are we, because I'm not, obviously, we're not complicit in a fictional narrative. Fictional narratives are fictional narratives. But it does sort of say something about our appetite for violence as a methodology for entertainment. And
Yeah.
we shouldn't look away from that. As hard as it is to see, we shouldn't look away from it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to my horror movie TED Talk. Yes. So
Your
let's
your Teddy Krueger talk.
let's change the subject with Josh's number 7.
Well, of course, my number 7 is going to be much more lighthearted than what what you've brought to
Funny
the table.
games.
Which, my God, Jed, tonight, um, you're going to be sending people to therapists for
I'm
years to come.
I'm truly sorry.
Okay, I have gathered my thoughts. I trying to
Did you have some Krispy Kreme and coffee?
yeah, shake off the sleeps. For
All
those of
right.
you that aren't aware, my day begins at 4 a.m. So sometimes at night, the wall comes pretty fast. So hopefully we hurdled it this time, and let's get on to my number
7.
7. Okay, uh, my number 7, which coincidentally almost inspired next week's list, but we'll get to that later.
Ooh.
Um, is surprising. I think that's a great word. Not because of what it is, but because it exists in the state that it does. And I don't mean like location wise. Because one of the first things that surprised me when watching this movie was not hearing Christmas music over the credits. Because up until this point, it was a franchise known for Christmas time. But no, Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance,
Oh no.
takes winter away from John McClane. It takes Christmas out of Die Hard. And for the first time ever, we see a John McClane that, you know what? It is the right season to run around barefoot. Die Hard with a Vengeance is John McClane back on his home turf doing, the job that he's actually paid to do. rather than the one that he keeps kind of getting forced into during the holidays. And between us, I think that's really the thing that's been missing in all of these sequels to Die Hard, other than an R rating in the previous one. I've always tied these movies to Christmas. Always Die Hard, Die Hard 2. Die Hard 3 comes in, and what does it do? You're getting shots of New York. Summer in the city. That's literally, what's playing as we're getting all of these, great footage, cinematic footage of the city, and then an explosion. Because Die Hard, things got to blow up. Well, for those of you unaware of, I'm going to make a t-shirt out of that phrase. Anyway, for those of you unaware of what Die Hard with a Vengeance is, you know what? Some of you might not know what Die Hard is. Long story short, John McClane's a cop. He's a New York cop. And Die Hard 1, he's in Los Angeles trying to reconnect with his estranged wife for the holidays. And then Nakatomi Plaza, the building that he's in, gets attacked. And they're trying to rob it. That would be Hans Gruber. In Die Hard 2, he's at the airport, Washington, D.C. He's got to save the day again. Die Hard 3, he's finally home. And unfortunately, there's a mad bomber. And he has to stop him, doing what John McClane does. Standing in Harlem with a racial slur on a sandwich board. Yeah. So yeah, Simon wants to play a game of Simon Says with John McClane. And like I said, sends him to Harlem with that racial slur written on a sandwich board that he has to wear walking down the streets. And naturally, the locals aren't thrilled, to say the least. But there's a good Samaritan that kind of goes to give him a hand, to at least find out why this crazy man is suicidal. And it turns out Simon sees this and he's like, nope, you two look good together. The Samaritan, he's your partner now. And I can't help but think, isn't that exactly what the producer said when they saw Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson side by side? You two work well together. You're partners now. So that's the movie in a nutshell. John McClane and I only remember his name as the Samaritan. Samuel L. Jackson. They have to figure out what the next move is for this bomber and try to stop him. Now, when it comes to summer, I already established that it's summer. They sing a song about it being summer over the credits. It's very, maybe that's the theme of the Die Hard movies. We're going to open with a song about what season it is. I don't remember any of the other Die Hard openings, so in my head, I'm just going to say that's the case. Summer, is it important to the story? Yeah. But I think the most important summary thing in Die Hard with a Vengeance isn't, the fact that it's summer. It's the fact that it's not winter. That's the big takeaway for a summer movie in this particular franchise, that it's not winter. Now, ideally, I suppose I could have dropped it down the list a little bit because it doesn't have the big summer impact to the story as some of these others. But you know what? The shock value of watching this movie, when it was released, before I knew of, we saw, trailers and stuff on TV, but we weren't getting that information as just the layperson of this is the plot. Um, at least not a 13-year-old. So seeing that it wasn't Christmas blew my mind. So that is why Die Hard with a Vengeance is on my list of top summer movies because it's not winter. Thank you.
Okay, that was actually with the best pitch for Die Hard 3 that I think I've ever heard. Also, just incidentally, Samuel L. Jackson's character's name is Zeus. Zeus Carver, I think.
I don't know
Zeus.
how I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it's hilarious because it's just so because it's funny. It's actually funny that his name is Zeus. Just I mean, he's, you know, the king of all gods.
Oh, and just so I'm perfectly clear, I'm not saying this is a great movie by any means. I'd say it's my third favorite Die Hard film.
Oh, okay.
I enjoyed it. So, what's
I
your number something or other?
we're on number 6, but I gotta say, I really like the. I really like. Oh, I almost said the name of my next film. I really like Die Hard 3 too it because I feel like the chemistry between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson is so awesome. It's just hilarious. And Samuel L.
Yeah.
Jackson, the gold bar scene where he's like, "Can I take this?" is just so. I mean, that's exactly what I would do. So I really loved it. I love the whole idea of this movie. It was really fun. Um,
And then
okay.
that big spoiler at the end, which I won't spoil.
Yes, yes. Well, everything about this movie was actually just like I said. It was just a fun movie. This was a kind of movie that you would go see over the summer and you would have fun with. You would just go,
Mhm.
yeah, this is great. Okay, well, my number 6 movie begs the question, do they ever say die? No. No, they do not. Goonies never say die. I chose Goonies for my number 6 movie not only because I absolutely love this movie and have t-shirts and all kinds of film paraphernalia from it, but I also just absolutely adore the whole message of this movie, which is family, family, family. Whether it's found family, whether it's created family, or whether it is a family that is just loosely associated. Yes, I just absolutely feel like this movie plays on all of the correct tropes to give us feels. It's nostalgic for me in a lot of ways, but it it has a lot of staying power. I mean, the story of kids off on an adventure. Okay, well, let me say this before I forget. This movie reminds me, not that this is something that I did with my friends or anything. We didn't find pirate treasure and we, weren't running away from mafia bosses or whatever. But, this movie really reminds me a lot of the way that when I was growing up, uh, we we interacted with each other. We would all go to one or other of each other's houses. We would go off on some crazy adventure for the day or whatever. We would plan something and then we would just go do it. Adults were I mean, it's not like the adults in your life weren't around. Of course they were around, but if you are an 80s kid, you experienced a world where you didn't have the same kind of helicopter parents or people kind of around you 24/7. I don't understand exactly what the difference is here because today I feel like this kind of experience would never happen. You don't Nobody leaves their kids for the day to go off and have an adventure like this. You just wouldn't. And I mean part of it is whatever. Anyway, okay, to go back to this though, it reminds me of the kind of things that we all thought we were going to get involved in. Let's go search for buried treasure. Let's go. At one point I remember us trying to find a shipwreck Just things that were like y- the stuff of legend, and usually there's nothing there, or we would just like create something out of nothing. But being together with your friends this way was sort of the point. It was just absolutely the thing to do in summer. You go off on your bike or you hang out with your friends and figure out some kind of grand adventure to go on. Goonies plays on, I think, some of the best, what we now think of as 80s tropes that there really were. There is danger, there is puzzle solving, there is each kid sort of has his or her own special skill, which is relied on in the film in order to get them closer to One-Eyed Willie's treasure. There is a sense of community, sense of belonging. There is peril and danger, both from the family perspective with the house being foreclosed on, and then also from just the individual perspective. A group of kids who get sort of seen as, being outcasts. Goonies is not necessarily a term of endearment in any circle. And the jocks don't like them. There's a little bit of, teenage misogyny, and that kind of stuff that you just sort of go, ew. But then in the end, that actually plays a part in being empowered and taking control of your own narrative, things like that. It all adds up to a grand summer adventure, the likes of which most of us would never get to take part in. And yet, it is absolutely one of the funnest times in a movie that I can think of. It really is a good, an exciting adventure movie that really withstands the test of time. It's no less fun to watch Goonies be Goonies than it was when this film was first released. I highly, highly recommend this movie. There's so much that's been done in terms of tributes to the movie, lots of trivia out there, all kinds of, remembrances and things like that. Sean Astin has talked about this movie at length. Just really good stuff is always associated with this movie. So I highly suggest it. It's a really great feel good summer movie. And unlike some of the other choices on my list, this movie will generally put you in a great mood. So The Goonies, my number 6.
I couldn't put it on my list.
Aw, why? Didn't have enough
Um,
room?
I'm not sure I should say
Because you don't think it took place in the summer?
because it didn't take place in the summer.
Is that why?
Yes.
Oh, but it's a summer flick.
Was it released in the summer? Is that
Definitely.
okay? Then yeah. Then yeah, 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 yeah. So what number am
Number number 6.
My number 6 is something that, ah, look at me stalling for time, trying to find the words. I should write something down before I begin talking.
That might actually help. I do that. I create little synopses of what it is that I want to say, and then generally improv from there. But yeah, sometimes it does help a little bit.
Well, my number 6 is a film that's shown in film classes the world over because it is an amazing movie, directed by one of the greatest directors of all time. Oh, ooh. Sorry, I had a random thought enter my head. So, it's Rear Window, Hitchcock. I know. Someone would say, that doesn't scream summer, Josh. It's not fitting your mo of beaches and vacations and just good old summer fun. Well, you're right. You're right.
Well, we
Although do the right thing didn't really follow that criteria either. But at least that involved, things like busting open a fire hydrant to beat the heat. No, Rear Window, um, though it does have in common with Do the Right Thing, is not a typical summer fare. In fact, the vast majority of it takes place in a an apartment, um, where Jimmy Stewart has a broken leg, and he's kind of you know being nosy to his neighbors, which is how everything starts. That's how it begins. He sees something that he thinks he might have seen, but then again he's not entirely sure, and then he wants to do some further investigating. But again, you're asking, Josh, what does this have to do with summer? Get to the point already. Well, the thing is, how did he have access to all of those open windows? It was summer. It was hot. People are trying to cool off. They opened the window. If it was a cold day, windows would have been shut, blinds pulled. Everyone would be like, "Nope, not letting this cold air in. Nope, not gonna happen." But nope, it was summer, and people wanted to get that cool breeze. People wanted to let that summer light in. Save on electricity, and that gave Jimmy Stewart the perfect the perfect view of all of the comings and goings of the people in the neighboring buildings. And that's what he did with his broken leg. He sat there and watched. Oh, that sounds kind of creepy. He sat there and watched, and it still works. Think of Disturbia, except good. Okay, I don't want to knock Disturbia. As far as homages go, it wasn't bad, but it was an homage to Rear Window. It was a blatant ripoff, actually. It was a blatant ripoff of Rear Window, and there's a reason for that. It's a brilliant film that is kicked off. Like Do the Right Thing, it's kicked off by the fact that it's hot, that the summer heat is sweltering. People are trying to cool off. And if there's anything we've learned so far, it's when summer strikes, stories happen. And that's why Rear Window is my number 6.
so we sorry, had to clear my throat here to make sure that I accentuate the right point. We are definitely playing very loose and fast with our rules about what this sort of is. And I, for one, feel like this is great because we definitely have explored topics which fit into thematic parts of summer which don't necessarily correlate directly to the summer. And sometimes I think that our lists get a little bit too not nitpicky, but we get too specific. And I feel like this list has been all over the map. And it feels like a really good list because of that. So I think that this is great.
And we're only halfway
Absolutely here for
through.
this. And we're only halfway through. Although my next five are yeah, first of all, there's no way that you can uh deny the summer-ness of my top five. It is probably the I mean they're when I say quintessential, they're not just like they're not just summer flicks. They are actually about the summer. So, okay, my number five is a movie that came out on Disney not too long ago, and it's called Luca. This movie is, I think, one of my most favorite Disney films because it deals with a friendship that is unconventional on a number of different fronts. One of which is Luca actually lives underneath the water, and he comes up on land and strikes up a friendship with a boy who he probably wouldn't have been best friends with. Let's just say that he's a little bit rebel in his nature. And it's really fun. The things that set this movie in motion over the summer, kind of tie in with a race and feelings of belongings, feelings of alienation, all the things that kind of, you explore as a kid, sort of growing out of your kid phase and growing into your slightly more grown phase. Not quite young adult, but definitely moving in that sort of range. It's an awesomely well-made movie. It's beautiful to see. The animation in this is absolutely gorgeous. It's Disney and Pixar. It is, I mean, it's a coming of age story, but it's more than a coming of age story. It's I think a story where the heart of understanding what friendship is and isn't is kind of at the forefront. Um, how to sort of deal with your family and their disapproval of maybe your friends, and how your friends can have a direct and profound influence on the choices that you make in your life. All really good lessons, all excellently told. I love this movie for, I think, more than just the those standard narrative pieces, but also because it's so gorgeously put together. Um, there's plenty of small pauses in the movie where we learn things about the backstory of each one of our characters. There's lots of like little revelations. And in the end is so satisfying because we sort of get a reconciliation between the characters, their wants, their desires, and the understanding that in order to grow, sometimes you have to let go a little bit. I love all the messages of Luca. When at this point, thinking about a summer movie, a movie that really beautifully illustrates what it's like to be in the middle of summer, even though I don't live in Italy. Um, just the understanding of kind of what kinds of things you do. This movie definitely gets a big thumbs up from me. It feels not just like, it doesn't just have a feel good movie aspect to it. It also kind of gives you a sense of, with all of the other stuff that's out there for kids programming, this one really sends very positive messages, both about accepting who you are and accepting the uniqueness of other people. And, all the misunderstandings that can happen and how it can change how you perceive another person. And maybe it's not actually built on the foundation that you think it is. It takes a lot of nuanced learning to understand some of these things. And I think that Luca really does try to tackle it with a lot of brevity. So Luca gets my number 5 choice.
It is a great film.
I love it. I really love it. And this one does take place over the summer. We know that because in the fall he goes to school.
Well, it's good. It's good. Summer movie happening in the summer. I dig it.
For once.
I wasn't gonna say it out loud. Um, my number five. My number five is. I'm sorry, but it's sort of more the same theme about how the heat
Oh
kind of
no,
drives you nuts.
we're in trouble.
My number five is 12 Angry Men.
Oh, wow. Good film. Really good film.
And now comes the mental gymnastics that I do to prove that it's worth the summer pick. Okay, stop me if you've heard this one. It's hot in the city, and there are 12 men in a jury room trying to figure out nothing. Nothing.
In the days before AC.
Exactly. So you got 11 guys in there that are just like, hey, he's guilty. Let's wrap it up. Let's go home. It's hot. I got tickets to a ball game. And, you know, these 11 guys, they just want to go home. So they're not in that sweltering little box of a room anymore because they're all absolutely convinced this guy's guilty anyway. But then there's one man that stands alone and says, "Hey, the consequences of our choice are pretty dire. So, how about we at least take a second to discuss it?" And then as the day rolls on and people start having kind of second thoughts about just how guilty this verdict is, or this person is, and how they have to kind of take a look inward at the same time to maybe grasp their maybe unintentional preconceived notions or prejudices. And an actual want of truth comes about to in spite of the heat. Now, as far as being able to portray the heat of the summer, yeah, it's, admittedly an outside stretch for some things, but people go to the window, they try to get that breeze. Is it affects their thinking, their logic. So not only does this standalone juror have to do what the defense attorney couldn't do, which is, analyze the evidence in front of them and question it, but he has to fight the one thing he can't control, really, and that's the heat from summer, and keep these men's uh, more than attention, keep their focus and keep their minds in an analytical space. Now, some people take longer than others to really get there, because whether it's because they're absolutely convinced of someone's guilt, or whether they're just tired of being hot, or whether or not we just got to get to the ball game, whatever the case may be. This lone juror is fighting an uphill battle on multiple fronts, and the heat is definitely one of them. The 12 Angry Men film is absolutely one of the best films ever made, period. Period. And did I throw it on there because it does take place during the summer? Maybe. But do I think it's worthy of a mention on this list? Sure. But I think I did an adequate job to help you, the listener, understand exactly why summer played such an integral role in this film. Because who knows, as I've mentioned earlier tonight, for other films, if the season was different, maybe they would have had more patience. Maybe they wouldn't have had to be convinced so much as kind of reiterated the evidence in some ways. They would already be in that frame of mind of, well, we should probably talk about it. But 12 Angry Men is my number five.
I mean, by those criteria and rules, I suppose we could have put To Kill a Mockingbird in here too. And Atticus Finch would have been absolutely and Scout would have been deserved, I think, on that using that criteria because To Kill a Mockingbird also happens in the summer, and it, like 12 Angry Men, also involves a courtroom and sort of gives us this feeling of expert tension. So yeah, I
Hmm.
can see that that would definitely work. Okay.
This is all a
Uh,
major hit piece on Summer, by the way. Can't stand
yeah, we all hate summer. No, that's not true. I love summer. I moved to Hawaii because yeah, I love summer.
it.
Well, I love tropical summer. Let's be clear here. Uh, okay. My number four is a movie that almost everybody that I know in my age group knows about and has seen. And when I used to do kids club for the Four Seasons, um, all of the kids used to ask for this movie over successive years and years and years. I mean, like I was there for 7+ years, and it never changed. I mean, this was always a hit. It deals with baseball. It deals with a giant dog. It deals with making friends and also figuring out that maybe you shouldn't use Babe Ruth's ball for your practice. Yeah. It's called The Sandlot. The Sandlot is another one of those. It's not. I don't know if it's a coming of age movie as much as it is a freeze frame of a moment in time when a kid who is kind of new to the neighborhood figures out that he can find a place with the sort of misfits of the neighborhood who are called together to play baseball. Through baseball, they learn basically everything. They learn about each other. They learn about the value of friendship. They learn about the sort of some deeper understandings of life that I feel like we all kind of get to, but they explore it in super interesting ways. Baseball is just sort of the catalyst to bring, well, not the catalyst. Baseball is the thread that they pull on that kind of brings them all together, but ultimately it's really the story of who they are together as a group. Each individual person in the Sandlot is memorable as a character. Um, there's all kinds of just fun goodness to this movie. Definitely takes place over the summer. I mean, there's no doubting that. They I feel like they do things in this movie that it's not just that it makes you feel good. It's that the movie itself really highlights an era of it's gone now, but it highlights an era of being a kid at a time when being a kid was both difficult but also really fun. A lot of good things could happen, and the adventures that you could go on, the things that were sort of you quote unquote allowed were a lot more permissive, I think, during that time. And so just kind of gives you a sense of, or it gives me a sense of nostalgia altogether. But without there isn't a lot that you can say about Sandlot without giving every single thing away. So let's just say that this movie um really kind of brings together all of the highlights of what it is to be a kid in the summer, be looking for friends, find friends, and then explore that for the whole summer through baseball. So, The Sandlot, my number four choice.
Crossover.
Ooh, very nice. So, good choice. I will definitely mention tequila when you when you start talking about
And
Sandlot.
As is usually the case, the sequel was not nearly as good.
No, it really wasn't. It didn't capture the same magic. The Sandlot really has a lot of magic around it. It's just so good. It's so well told. It's concise, unlike me. And it doesn't pander to kids. It actually says, "No, you know what? Kids can do a lot." And yeah,
Nope. Jen.
yes. Hello?
Yep. You went quiet for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I? Did my
Yeah.
mic go out? I'm so
Yes, it
sorry.
did.
I'm so sorry. Well, in any event, what's your number 4, Josh?
My number 4, coincidentally, is also about baseball,
Ooh.
but it's not The Sandlot.
Is it
That's right.
Angels in the
That means
Outfield?
there's no. God.
I'm really glad because I was just about to needle you to death if it was.
That was a really weird year, wasn't it? We
It
had Angels in
was.
the Outfield and Rookie of the Year. They're like, let's make kids in baseball movies.
I guess it must have been one of those like rampant, hey, we've got a hit on our hands. Let's keep doing this to death.
So you know how it goes. Baseball. It's literally called the Boys of Summer, except when it's the Ladies of Summer.
Ooh.
My number 4 is A League of Their Own, and what can I say? It's a comedic masterpiece. It has a stunning cast from top to bottom, with Gina Davis taking charge, and Tom Hanks in the sort of managerial position. Lori Petty's in there. Rosie O'Donnell, Madonna. You know what? I'm even going to say John Lovitz. One of the lines that I quote often is, "Well, then, this would be more, wouldn't it?" So it's a quotable movie. Oh, what's it about? Well, for those of you that haven't watched it or heard about the Amazon series that is loosely based on the same events ish. I'm not sure which one's more looser, even though the Rockford Peaches never made it to the championship in their first year. Just throwing that out there as a bit of trivia. Racing did win it all, though. Anyway, kind of going off on a tangent. World War II is in full effect. And worried about the men being drafted, it was decided, you know what? We're going to have the ladies play ball. Except it was during a not exactly puritanical time, but things were definitely a bit more on the strict side, especially when it comes to, the way a lady is supposed to be perceived in public. Yeah, this was right around the time of, I would say, what, Rosie the Riveter, where there was sort of an image change in progress. But when it comes to baseball, when it comes to being, on the front lines of American of the American zeitgeist, sports was a major thing. Baseball was a major thing in the 40s, and will continue to be for generations. Let's not get that uh, mixed up. So to keep in the air of, being not only baseball players but ladies, and of course to attract the male spectators, they had them wear little skirts as uniforms. And one of the lines that you kind of hear thrown around offhandedly is, "How am I supposed to slide in that?" Because one of the things they did, they went around and recruited. That's what John Lovitz said, and that's what his character did in the movie. Went around recruiting the female baseball players from the barn leagues around the country, and they were actually ball players. So they were doing the running, the jumping, the spitting, the sliding, and to be told, okay, you're going to wear this was a bit of shock to some of them, and in some cases, it was the first time that they were ever taught about being, quote unquote, a proper lady. So their ERA, their hit percentage not only had to be on point, but their makeup did too. So that's sort of in my opinion what makes the women that played baseball in this era a lot more tougher than the guys because they had to put up with a lot more crap. But the main story follows Dottie Henson and her very short career as a ball player in the movie. That is because all she really wants to do is go home, be a mom. She just happens to be a good ball player. That's not what her life is. Her husband went off to war, and then she just kind of she wants something to do until he gets back, but she also wants to help out her kid sister. Kind of give her that opportunity to be more than a small town girl living in a lonely world. So they took that mid afternoon train going to Chicago. Actually, it's one of the easiest tie-ins on my list to summer because, as I said, baseball in general is the boys of summer. They switched it up in the 40s and said the ladies of summer. And that's exactly what happened. Ladies took over the ball field, and the rest is history. A League of Their Own is my number 4.
Oops. I was on mute. Okay. I feel like we both get at least one of those. I was busily talking away saying I love A League of Our Own. Okay. Without further ado, I am going to introduce my number 3. I'm going to introduce it with a line from the movie. In only in the hottest years this happens, and this year it grows hot. We begin finding our men. We found them sometimes without their skin, and sometimes much, much worse. This quote is from the 1987 movie Predator. See, there's a reason that I mentioned it earlier. Predator is one of my favorite movies that basically can't take place unless it is summer because we know that the predators love the heat. They only come when it's hot. I am not 100% sure why that is, but I don't think we've ever discovered that in Predator lore. And also, Predator versus Alien makes that sort of not right. So I'm not sure where they were going with this mythology, but back in 1987, before we had an entire Predator franchise, we had this movie, and this movie basically made it absolutely apparent that predators only come to Earth when it's hot. They're in the jungle. Stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're in the jungle. Arnold is part of a recon team that is looking for this other recon team w- with a leader by the name of Hopper, I believe. And the chopper goes down and they're looking for these people. And what they find out is that the predators have been kind of busy, basically taking their skulls and spines for trophies. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Uh, this movie is so quintessentially a 1980s film. It is so end of sort of Arnold's hot time as an action hero when he was moving out of his Conan the Barbarian phase. And it is, I can't say that it's like the best movie ever, but it is definitely one of those movies like Top Gun that has a lot of nostalgia for me in it. It has this sort of like hot in the jungle feeling to it, which is it totally on purpose, obviously. But then it also has this feeling of like, the stakes get really high because it is so hot in the jungle, and everybody is sort of dealing with that on top of being stalked by these invisible things that they cannot figure out where they are, when they're going to strike, what's going to happen. They bleed some kind of fluorescent green. They bleed a fluorescent color. All kinds of crazy stuff. I really love this movie, both for being doesn't take itself super serious. It still has like the Grady's, still has the great 80s lines that are like, throwaway lines that just kind of make you laugh. But it also has a lot of action, explosions, aliens from outer space, rebel camps, and, kind of like puts everybody either against each other or against the aliens. Nobody's really sure who they should trust or how they should trust them. It's just generally one of my most favorite summer movies. I can't say that all the rest of the Predator movies have been amazing, but they are good. And in fact, Predator 2 works off of the summer theme where they're in the city and Danny Glover's character is a police detective, and the same thing happens. It's summer, it's hot, it's, there's tensions are high, things are happening with drug lords, and then the predators come. So I mean, like, the predator seems to really thrive on this idea that like summer is the predator season. It drives me crazy that Predator versus Alien, it takes place at an Arctic base because, hey, what happened to, it's supposed to be hot. But we'll get into that on another day. For now, my number 3 choice, Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, 1987. Super, super, super awesome.
If it bleeds, it dies.
I love everything about that movie. It's just, uh, it reminds me so much of like, when things were slightly more less nuanced in terms of storytelling. Like everything is just out there flopping on the surface for you to see. There's no You don't need subtle nuance to get into this. It's just us versus them. And it really is fun. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I always enjoy this movie.
It is a great one.
And it's
Speak.
definitely summer.
Yeah. Uh, well, for the final time, I'm going to play the card. It's hot. People do crazy things.
Oh god.
What can I say? I'm a fan of that theme. And in this time, it doesn't just talk about what happens when somebody kind of loses it.
Uh-oh.
It shows us in all its glory what happens.
Oh boy.
Now, mind you, the guy had a lot of issues beforehand, and maybe it wasn't even so much the summer heat that put him over the top. But there is just something about a story about a man trying to get across town in the summer that is just so identifiable. Especially when that man is Michael Douglas and the movie is falling down. Long story short, it's about a guy that's just, he's had enough of the way the world's changed, enough of people being just awful, and he's fighting back completely unnecessarily, and much to the chagrin of Robert Duvall, who has to kind of chase him down, track him down, find out who he is when he's supposed to retire. He's like, no, no, I'll find him. So he begins this investigation into the guy that he only knows as Defense, because that's what the car's license plate said. And it's the little things that really set him off. Going to a fast food joint and wanting breakfast, but you're just a few minutes too late. And you're only a few minutes too late because the people in front of you just take forever to order. So by the time you get up to the counter, they're like, we don't serve breakfast anymore. It's too late. So yeah, it's gonna bug the crap out of you. But due to some light convincing with some stolen guns, he got his breakfast. But then the thing that really gets under his skin, how come my sandwich doesn't look like the one on the board? He just wants it to look like the delicious thing that they're advertising, and it looks like crap. Is he intending to go on this rampage across the city? No, absolutely not. In fact, if you want to say, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Tucker and Dale, where people are kind of like falling down around him, especially gang members. And he just happens to be there. Sure, you can go with that. He has no, I'd say, terrible intent. It's just he's not willing to put up with people today. And, it's odd. Who does? Who has the energy for that? He's a somewhat sympathetic character because we've all had days where we're done. His just happens to be a bit more tragic than most. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons he does the things that he does in this movie. Personal reasons, family reasons. And it's a story that is told very well. I highly recommend watching Falling Down. That's why it's my number 3.
I have to agree. Although Falling Down reminds me of it. It reminds me about why we have the trope of angry white man. Um, because yes, he has had enough, and it isn't that anything is racially motivated in Falling Down, but this particular type of angry white man rage is sort of very restricted to angry white men, especially angry white men over middle age or at middle age, where the world stops making sense and everything feels like it is kind of out to get you. It's erroneous and it's a false equivalence. Don't Because I don't want to get trapped in the, idea that there's something to be had here, but it is absolutely the idea that you have a stake in the world and that the world does owe you something, that you have been working your job for so long and no one has ever given you recognition, and aren't you worthy of that? Or aren't you worthy of getting a burger that looks like the burger that they advertise? There is an overarching sense of entitlement that happens in this movie, which is glorious to delve into, because I think it reminds us all that we all have to take a giant step back from what we think we're entitled to and what we think we need, and understand that maybe that's not actually a proper perception of the world. I have to say that Falling Down is also I mean, it's one of my, I think, eh, I think one of my favorite movies that exposes the psychological underbelly of what it feels like to have that sense of entitlement be incredibly under understood, understood, and not appreciated. Like, you it's hard to explain, but it's like I get why all of these things start adding up and making him feel so upset. But at the same time, you also understand that none of this had to happen. All of this was his own making. And it's just great. I love it. I his portrayal in this movie of that type of character is just so pitch perfect. So yeah, awesome movie.
And that haircut.
And the haircut, even his glasses. Like it just everything works together in concert to just make him quote unquote that guy. Just
Hmm.
perfect. Yep, love it. Absolutely love it. All right. My sorry if there's a little bit of background noise. I had to keep my window open so that you might hear some outside stuff. Sorry. My number 2 movie was the crossover that Josh and I had earlier, Jaws. Um Jaws, I think it got my number 2, so you know it's got to be important to me. Jaws, I think it's not just a good summer movie; it is the summer movie. Back in a time, and I was too young when this movie came out. I mean, I don't even know if I was truly even aware. Although I was aware enough that my cousins at the lake, who were always tormenting me, obviously, used to chant 3 feet of water, 3 feet of water. Because there's a line in the movie apparently that says, a shark can attack in 3 feet of water. And yeah, I, like an idiot, didn't understand that sharks don't live in fresh water. Well, at least none yet. Anyway, no, it wasn't in the ocean, and I should have known better. Anyway, Jaws has the kind of blockbuster feel to it from a movie that is sort of it's hard to even recreate anymore. I mean, we've had a couple recently, but they're few and far between. And it really captures sort of like this fear of the unknown. You hop into the water and you don't expect that there will be any kind of consequence for just going for a swim. And yet, yeah, there's something lurking underneath. The thing that I think makes Jaws really cool is it's sort of like the man-eating lion to me. Sort of like Jaws picked up on this idea that the shark got a taste for man flesh and was like, "Yeah, this is the best thing I've had since that orca." Oh, sorry, the name of the boat was Orca. It's just so fun to be in this world where clearly the stakes are super high for everybody. The town of Amity, we need all of this incredible tourist dollars. You can't go telling people that there's a problem. And then the other part of this, which is I think the Sheriff Brody's idea that keeping people safe for him is it's serious, but he also has his own demons to fight, his own fears, and he has to sort of come to his own personal moment of reconciliation in order to make everything happen that needs to happen. To just getting him on the boat is like a monumental task. And then of course there's the over the top stuff of the giant shark. And I think back in the day when we didn't know a lot about great white sharks and we thought that great white sharks really were only sort of, coastal reef uh dwellers from Australia and places that were very warm in the waters. Now we know that great white sharks actually go different places. But back then there wasn't the Discovery Channel. We didn't have like a lot that wasn't printed, in Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever. And so there was this mystique around giant great white sharks. And it played perfectly into the movie's sort of over the top idea, sensationalizing the great white shark. And it worked so well. It absolutely worked well. Um, Jaws is such a good tension movie. Every moment of Jaws feels like it's intending to make you be tense, be scared, something is lurking. Even the moments of pure joy, like when the kids are sailing, there's pure joy happening there, but we know that something is hidden under the surface and it's coming for them. So even those moments have this phenomenal juxtaposition where something dangerous is about to upend the whole world as they know it. And that tension is just beautifully done. I absolutely love it. So Jaws gets my number two spot on the list. This is absolutely one of the best summer movies that I can think of.
It's the originator for sure.
It, yeah, for sure. Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay. My number two?
Your number two.
Well, guess what? It's where we cross over again.
Hey, we had crossovers at number two for both of our movies. That's super cool.
Except my movie is The Sandlot. What can you say? Oh, well, I guess you can say everything that you said earlier about it. So I second all of that. And I will just add, as a personal note, I grew up uh, Air Force brat. So my dad was Air Force. We moved around a little bit. And I know exactly what it's like being the new kid in the neighborhood, um, wondering if I was going to make any friends. And coincidentally enough, it was during that summer that I met some of my greatest friends playing lot ball at, out behind our apartment complex. So I literally played baseball on a sandlot when I was a kid, and I wish I could say that it was, you know, nice to see. Oh, it's my childhood on screen. No, the movie actually came first, so we were emulating the movie, and it was one of those things that we we all saw. A kid that age, we all saw the movie, and we emulated the movie, and we played lot ball, and we were knocking dingers and just having a grand old time being kids, completely unsupervised and left to our own devices. And guess what? We just went out and played and had fun. Now, I will admit, I'm not that kind of parent. My kids don't leave the house. And I think that's more to do with it being the city I live in rather than just, being paranoid about, you know, something happening. And I know the two go kind of hand in hand, but we didn't get the title of murder capital of Florida for nothing. So yeah, it's not the best of cities to be a kid. I'll tell you that much. Very unfortunate. So yeah, the idea that riding bikes, a bicycle was freedom, and hanging out with your buddies, trying to get into shenanigans and tomfoolery. This film is childhood, much like the Goonies, and that's why it's my number two.
I mean, I have to second that. It's it. I've said everything I could possibly say about the Sandlot without, like giving away every single piece of the plot. But this movie reminds me that being a kid is about more than just the things that sometimes as adults we attribute to being a kid. There's all these subtle nuances happening. There's all these little potentials for things to happen that sometimes we just have to let happen, even though they can be a little bit problematic for our kids to have to deal with. They have to figure it out. And I love this movie for giving sort of both the adults the opportunity to say, yeah, that can happen, and also for kids to see it and go, yeah, you know what? Okay, I'm not alone. This is good. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's a whole
absolutely.
lot of, should we do this? Yeah. Okay.
Right, right. And then, the consequences of what happens afterwards. And, making the right choices can sometimes lead to very unexpected rewards in the sense that, with the whole Babe Ruth uh narrative part, sometimes really good things can happen. You just have to be willing to do the right thing. And I do love that message. It's just such a
Hmm.
great message. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, well, my
Number
number
one.
one choice. Okay, this movie is probably a movie that you have not heard of, unless you have the streaming service called Shudder. Um, it's another horror movie, but this movie is quite a bit different from the other horror movies. Social commentary is not quite as, let's just say, hit you over the head as much as it is fun. This movie, much like The Goonies, The Sandlot, and Luca, deals with coming of age. It is, if you've ever seen the movie, well, I won't get into that. I think I'll just explain what the movie is about and then maybe do a quick comparison afterwards. It's called The Summer of 64, or I'm sorry, Summer of 84. Summer of 84 is about a group of kids in a neighborhood who start to believe that their neighbor is up to no good and basically kind of chase uh down a rabbit hole in order to prove, or in some cases disprove, that he might be the reason that some people have gone missing. They suspect that he's a serial killer, and they basically do like recon missions, spying on him, trying to, gather some evidence about whether or not he's the killer. And obviously this sort of creates problems in the neighborhood with families and other people where they're living in close proximity. In the end, it's so satisfying. There's so many good things that happen. Just I mean, not, I shouldn't. It's obviously the guy is a serial killer, but the I would classify this movie as dark humor. It's extremely, there's a lot of sardonic moments in it where you just sort of feel the irony sort of dripping out of it. It's really excellent in terms of its production values, even though it was made literally on a shoestring. um but it's fabulous because it is the kind of coming of age movie that sort of gives you all of the nostalgic feels while also dealing with this overarching, top of the food chain sort of person who's trying to outwit a whole group of teenagers, and basically in the end doesn't quite, it, things happen at the end of this film that will absolutely make you go, "Oh, that was really good." I guess that's the best way I can say it. There, I think one of the things that I really like about this movie is that it sort of deals with um kind of conspiracies and urban legends in a way that is a little bit different. Like, how do these things get started, and why is that important even in how we look at each other? Summer of 84 also features one of, and it was the iconic image. I don't They've changed the poster now, but the iconic image of Summer of 84 was missing kids on a milk carton. And if you're old enough to remember what that means, cool. If you're not, they used to highlight the fact that kids were missing. This is in the days before the internet. They used to highlight the fact that kids were missing by putting their pictures on milk cartons so that people could see who they were, learn their names, and then if they saw them, call the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And it was a big thing. there were kids that were missing and they would end up on the back of milk cartons. And in fact, now it's kind of a trope if you are Gen X where, you'll say, hey, something like, a threat, like, don't make me put you on a milk carton container or something like that. Well, maybe nobody really says that, but it's a tropey thing. Um, I do really love this film for so many different reasons. Other than just the dark irony and the and sort of the over the topness of some of the things that happen, it also sort of stays a bit grounded in some of its narrative, in the idea that it's really about the kids. Like, the characters are really important here, a little bit like Stranger Things, where each character sort of has both their own, hey, this is what I'm good at and that's what's going to happen, but also has their own weaknesses. And it just kind of gives it a more personal feel. In terms of the summer aspect of it, yeah, the kids don't have anything else to do but track down this idea that their neighbor is a serial killer. Um, it's wild. It takes a lot of crazy turns. Some things don't end the way that you think they're going to end, and maybe it's not very good. But then some things are like truly scary. The inside of his house is really scary. I mean, there were some moments in there where it was definitely. I didn't expect to see some of the things that I saw. And again, in the end, I think there is something interesting about looking at a coming of age show, a movie, through the eyes of a, crime detective with teenagers, that is it's very different than Sandlot, but it is that same type of feel. So Summer of '84 gets my number one choice. It is one of the best movies in terms of a horror movie that, and it's not, I mean, it's not like, it's not crazy with the amount of, goriness or anything like that. It's really, it's a horror movie, but it's a lot of sort of thriller mystery attached to it. It was released in 2018. It got like, a ton of awards attached to it for being so sort of good in its category. So Summer of '84, really, really, really good. And I think you can actually see this now on other streaming services other than just Shudder.
Well, I'm gonna have to check it out.
It's great. It's really great. Yeah, and it's not funny games, and it's not Last House on the Left. It's not like that. It's very much a standalone film that works without being too dark.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like a good choice.
Well, I hope so. I hope everybody checks it out and likes it. So where are you with your number one movie, and why is it a goofy movie?
Oh, you think it's a goofy movie?
I mean, I guessed, but is it? Now I'm going to feel embarrassed.
Well, my movie also has a bit of a horror slant to it
Oh,
because it
really?
starts off not at the very beginning, but the story really kicks off with a threat.
Hmm.
Do you know what that threat is?
Uh,
No, I haven't told you what the movie, so you know you don't know what that threat
I
is
don't
yet.
know. What is the threat?
One of our main characters gloomily looking around him at all of the people that have grown to just get on his nerves, the ones that have treated him so poorly. He looks at him and says, "They've been laughing since I can remember, but they're not gonna laugh anymore."
I was right. God, I should have put money on this. Okay.
Yes, it's
I
a goofy movie.
I feel totally vindicated now.
Just like my intro.
I love it. That was great.
It is weird though. The song is like they're not gonna laugh anymore. It's like, whoa, those that's some red flags there, Maxie.
Them's fighting words.
So a goofy movie. Now I'm gonna preface this by saying I think I've mentioned it on the show before that when school is out and I'm leaving work for the last time for the school year, there are two songs playing. The first one, the second one is "School's Out," Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, yeah.
Gotta play that. The first song that I play is "After Today" from the Goofy movie because the movie literally kicks off summer. It's all about that last day of school and you're just cruising into the summer, getting ready for that vacation with dad. I've talked about this movie. It was my number one movie for vacation movies and well deserved. So I'm not really gonna break it down. But the fact that I can't officially begin my summer vacation without one blasting this in the parking lot on the way out, and then two within 24 hours of that moment watching the movie with my kids. It is the official signifier of summer starting for me. That's it in a nutshell. When it comes to movies about summer, in summer, for summer, a Goofy movie. It's got it all. The vacations, the singing. I assume everybody else sings in the summer,
All summer
and
long.
all summer long.
Yep.
It is everything you need to have a summer movie. And I mentioned last week, as we were wrapping up, that when you announced this topic, I said, "Yeah, I have my number one. I kind of wish we were on camera because then I'd have one of two options to sport. What kind of apparel I could sport on tonight's episode, but it totally would have given everything away because one is my Powerline World Tour shirt, uh, which I have, and again I've completely given it away. Powerline is the artist Max wants to see across the country. Um, the other shirt that I have that I think is actually much cooler is Lester's Possum Park. So
I
yeah,
love that.
I have those shirts because this movie is so awesome. The music is banging from beginning to end. It's got Bigfoot in it. It's got Bigfoot in it dancing to the Bee Gees. Big RVs. Deceit. Father son relationships. This movie's the best. And I will say this before I wrap up. It had no business being so good.
I think that's so true.
When you think back to all of the classic Disney tales, this was a time when this was, post princesses. We were moving on from princesses and kind of getting more into, the Lion Kings and things like that. And then Disney's like, well, here's a movie about Goofy. And you're like, a movie about Goofy? I love Goofy, but a movie? It's a Goofy movie? That, dude, are we sure Goofy can carry a whole ass movie by himself? Sorry, language. Um, are we sure that he can do that? Turns out, yeah, the writers are like, huh, you know, I'm pretty sure they just want to nail this script in like 30 minutes. Anybody actually want to try? Yeah, you have some father issues, right? You're kind of, yeah. Let's put that in the script. Let's work this out. So they write a really good movie, and then when it comes time for the music, I'm sure someone's like, well, just throw whatever in there, and they're like, Prince? Should we like be aiming for Prince, Michael Jackson? Yeah, yeah, that works. Yeah, you know what? Let's make some real bangers. And they do. Everything about this movie is great. And that is why it deserves to be number one on every list that it is qualified for. And if I have my way, a few that it's not.
Well,
So,
I feel really good that I guessed it because I didn't put it on my list, and this is the movie that I was saying. I didn't put it on my list, but I wish that I had because I do really love this movie, and it does feel like the exact movie to watch for the summer. It's like it's not just a good movie. I mean, and like you said, it doesn't have any business being as good as it was, and yet, every once in a while a movie comes along and it's like a flash in the pan. It's like, we have a sea of things happening, and yeah, some of them are good and some of them are really good, but it doesn't exactly like rise above, to the top or anything. And then you get a movie like a Goofy movie, which is just sort of like, yeah, okay, it belongs in this genre over here, but wow, it went above and beyond what we would consider to be a good movie to, get a seal of excellence. And I have to say that I didn't even realize that this movie was going to be as good as it was. I actually got it on VHS when VHS was a thing. And I when I first saw it, I didn't I didn't have any high hopes. I didn't have any expectations for it at all. And I wasn't really paying attention to it. And then a friend that I was seeing at that time said, "No, you got to sit down and watch the whole thing. And you really got to pay attention because it's so good." And I thought, you're an adult telling me that this kids movie is good. What the heck? And but I did. I sat down and I watched the whole thing and I was like, "Oh my god. This is so good." So, absolutely 100% agree and think that is a really good choice. Between the two of us, we made a banging list this time.
for someone that loves a Goofy movie so much, it's the second time you've not added it to a list.
I always know that you will add it to the list, and so for deference, so that we can have a fair list, I add other things to my list, knowing that yes, Josh will indeed, if possible, add Kevin Smith and a Goofy movie to pretty much any list that can call for it. So I'm getting out here. We call it Akamai. I'm getting Akamai savvy to Josh's ways and using his, I know what his predispositions will be in order to form my own lists. So we have our own
Hmm,
sort of ecosystem of stuff happening here. It's good.
that's
It's very
true.
good.
That's why I steer clear from obscure horror films.
Yeah, right. I would almost believe that if I thought you actually watched any obscure horror flicks, but I
Well,
don't
that too.
actually think yeah, yeah. Come back and talk to me after you've seen Skinamarink, and then we'll have a quick conversation.
I should come out with a new Tin 1 shirt that says Josh's list, a Goofy movie, Kevin Smith, Jen's list, obscure horror title.
And odd foreign films,
No, I
odd foreign
can't.
films, and obscure
Although I've
horror.
been getting in, I've been watching quite a bit of Bollywood, so
Good. I mean, Bollywood is great.
because I want to do those lists eventually. I don't think I'm up to 10 yet though.
Those are awesome. Yeah, absolutely awesome.
As soon as I hit 10, I'll be like, okay, my list is pretty much default, but I can order these.
So let me tell you that over the past couple of weeks, I have not been feeling great, and I sort of have gone into a little bit of hibernation with some of my other projects. So some things are moving along and some things are not moving along. My podcast, which is the Storyteller Powers Hour, has not quite taken off the way that I want it to. I am trying to sort of get back in the saddle with that, but it's been a little bit slow. It's not because I'm not interested or because I don't have things I think I would love to share with everyone, but simply because, yeah, my life has been a little bit over the top recently, and health has been one part, but also family dynamics and just all the things that generally suck all of the time and life out of your, current life. So there's that. But I have still been working on Movies Make the Meal. So moviesandmeals.com. I've got a whole new section that I am trying to add maybe over the next couple of weeks that deals specifically with gaming. We decided to do some stuff from Zelda, and we came up with some ideas that aren't just Breath of the Wild, throw stuff in a pan and see what happens. We came up with some kind of organized stuff for that. We also came up with some interesting things for The Witcher, which we kind of love altogether, and a really interesting couple of dishes that deal with Resident Evil and a game that we love to play called Fear. But then, because of the success of The Last of Us, we decided we needed to do some Last of Us stuff. So we should be publishing that pretty soon. Myself and my middle child, who's my companion in the kitchen, are going to try to get that stuff done fairly soon. And yeah, that's kind of what's up with me. So, what's up with you, Josh? And also, what is my homework for next week?
Well, we should probably recap our list first.
Oh, you know what? I totally forgot to recap the list. I was so excited about what's going to happen next week. Okay. All right. I will. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
By all means,
Okay.
you can go first.
At number 10, I had Piranha 3D. At number 9, I had The Last House on the Left. At number 8, The Great Outdoors. At number 7, Funny Games. At number 6, The Goonies. At number 5, Luca from Disney. At number 4, The Sandlot. At number 3, Predator. At number 2, Jaws. And at number 1, The Summer of '84. How
All
about
right.
you?
I'm hitting save on the Jen Summer list for the 10-1 podcast letterboxed account. Give us money. And if you feel like following that, it's 10-1 pod at
Right.
letterboxed. Follow us, and you'll be able to keep track of our lists as
It's going to be great.
as they make it. And speaking of lists, I made a list of 10 movies, starting with number 10, National Lampoon's Vacation. Number 9, Jaws. Number 8, I rambled incoherently about Do the Right Thing. Number 7,
It's okay. I saved you.
yes, you
It's all
did.
good. It's all good.
Die Hard with a Vengeance. Number 6, Rear Window, not Front Window, Rear Window. Number 5, 12 Angry Men. Number 4, A League of Their Own. You see how I went from an all male thing to an all female thing?
How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, pretty good at that. Number 3, Falling Down. Number 2, The Sandlot. And number 1, As It Should Be, a goofy movie. That's my top 10 summer list. You're probably wondering what your homework is.
I am wondering what my homework is. I'm actually kind of excited now.
Okay, it's going to be a bit odd.
As if most of your homework is not odd. I mean,
I'm just
this is
kidding.
what makes the list good. This is what makes the list good.
It's going to be a bit even
Oh, okay.
because we're talking about fourth chapters.
Fourth chapters?
Yes, you know, a lot of movies have trilogies, but every once in a while there comes a series that expands past the trilogy.
Hmm.
And I want to know what our favorite fourth movies are in a series.
Oh boy. Are there 10? Do we like is wow.
In horror movies alone, you know that's like, oh, only the fourth one. Why not the 12th one?
Well, that's a
That's
good
more
point.
obscure.
I mean, that is a very good point. I mean, yes, that's true. If I think about it, there's actually quite a few. I mean, without even looking at Final Destination, which I feel like we we'll never get to the end of Final Destination. So,
I want a new Final Destination.
me too. I want a Final Destination. Oh, never mind. We'll get into that another day. But anyway, yes, let's let's definitely do that. Um, okay, yeah, I think I can. I think I can actually come up with a ton now that I think about it of movies that have four or that have had more than four movies in their franchise. Whew, man, that's going to be an interesting list. I mean, obviously, I think it'll skew heavily toward, some of my oldies but goodies. But now I'm trying to guess what kind of movies you might have on your list.
I think some of them are going to be fairly obvious. Others, maybe not so much, since I did what I always do and, uh, you know, spit out the list idea before I even put together mine.
Will there be Kevin Smith movies on your list?
I don't think they're eligible.
Because I couldn't think of any that had more than three.
Clerks maxed it out at 3, and it would be easy to say, well, look at the Marvel movies, right? You know, you got your Iron Man, and then you got your Hulk, and then you got your Thor, and then you got your Captain America: First Avenger. It's all a series, so yeah, we'll count it. No, no,
Hmm.
nope. If there was a fourth, well, there will be a fourth Captain America movie, so that would count. But that's only because it would be a fourth Captain America movie.
I do know the movie that has had the highest number of sequels, though. Or, yeah, the highest number of sequels. Do you want to know
Highest,
what it is?
hold on, let's see if I can figure it out. Highest number of sequels.
Hmm.
It's not James Bond
No. I do. I know this right off the top of my head.
because there are like 20, 22 of those.
Yep.
Okay, what movie has the highest number of sequels?
Godzilla.
Ah,
Coming in at 29 so far.
and those are direct sequels.
They are. They're all considered part of the same Godzilla universe, even when they kind of veer off. Because some of them are, there are some that you feel like maybe they're sort of retellings, but they're actually not. They consider them all sequels.
Okay, okay. It's one of those things where you know it. You get asked the question, and you're like, "Oh yeah, it's simple. It's this," and then you're told you're wrong, and you're like, "What else could it possibly be?" And then
Yeah, right?
once you hear the answer, you're like, "That totally makes sense."
I just saw somebody do a Godzilla retrospective, and that's how I know that juicy little tidbit because they talked about it.
Well, you asked me about next week. I don't know. Other than that, I got nothing planned.
It's going to be exciting, whatever this turns out to be. It will be exciting. I can think of some right off the top of my head that, even if they don't make it in there, we can definitely have a quick conversation about. And yeah, we should have some pretty interesting discussions about this. So this is going to be good. It's going to be good.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that the James Bond thing, that's an interesting ruling. I'm not sure where to land on that. Because it's definitely not one series, one canonical story.
No.
Uh, just wondering how that would break down per actor. You'd say
I guess I kind of would almost say that. Although, it's hard to say with James Bond because they're technically all different. Like, some of them are actually in different quote unquote universes.
mm-hmm.
They don't all take place in the same sort of time and space. So, I don't know. I'd have to really think about that.
So
I kind
we'll make a ruling behind the scenes.
I kind of feel the same way about Batman because, Batman has had so many movies, what, 9 or 10, but are they actually sequels? I don't know if they're sequels because some of them retell the same story. So I
I'd
don't
say
know.
Schumacher's movies are supposed to be sequels to Burton's movies.
Hmm. Yeah. There you go. I
Nolan
guess that
had
makes sense.
his little box, everything that wrapped up nice and neat. Everything else is kind of loose.
Yeah. 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 That's true. Super true. Well, I can't wait for next week. I know we're going to come up with some really good ones. I can feel this already. It's going to be interesting to see what we prioritize one over the other. So,
I think so
it'll be
too.
good. Yeah, it'll be good.
Before we head out of here, you want to tell people? Did you already tell people about moviesandmeals.com?
I did, and I also talked
Okay.
about my other podcast, and I said, "Hey, what about you, Josh?" And then we recapped the list. So
So
tell us all everything that is going on with Wadco Media.
well, there's onecomedia.com if you want to find out more information. It gives you all the links you need to go to the Facebook page, all the socials. If you want to, donate to the cause, yeah, there's a Patreon. Who cares about that? Buy a shirt, buy, whatever your favorite show is with Wadco, buy a shirt. That's how you show support. It's not a matter of money. It's just I think if you're going to invest like in what we do, then have something to show for it. Have something you can put on your desk, you can put on your body. I just think it's more fair that way.
Good idea.
So there's that. And there's always the Wadcast every Friday night at 10 p.m. Uh, Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And there's going to be a big announcement on Friday.
Woo!
Big announcement. So make sure you tune in for that.
You're not pregnant, are you?
I have been for 20 years.
No, we don't count the food, baby.
And I'm talking about the baby they already put in me.
Just checking. I mean, usually when somebody says they got a big announcement, that could be one of them. So,
Long
guess we
story,
can
but totally true.
rule that out. We can rule that out.
So I guess that's gonna do it for us here tonight. After all, 4 a.m. comes awfully fast.
So much fun. Thanks, everyone. This was really fun.
I guess the only thing left to say is say goodnight, Jen.
Good night, Jen.